My name is Alex, and I am 32 years old. I haven't slept for more than 2 hours at a stretch in over a decade. The things I'm about to tell you are true, every word. I have no reason to lie, and no desire to embellish. The truth is terrifying enough on its own. This isn't a story I tell at parties. It's a confession, a warning scrawled in the dim light of a salt lamp, the only kind of light that seems to keep the shadows at a respectful distance. It all started when I was 21, in my final year of college. I was living in a cheap, off-campus apartment, the kind of place that had seen generations of students wear down its floors and stain its carpets. It was a 2-bedroom unit, but my roommate Mark had dropped out the semester before to follow a band, so I had the place to myself. The solitude was a blessing at first, quiet, peaceful, the perfect environment for a procrastinating student to finally cram for finals. The first time I heard it, I was lying in bed, scrolling through my phone, the blue glow painting the darkness. It was a soft, rhythmic sound, like a pet wanting to be let in. Scritch, scritch, scritch. I froze, my thumb hovering over the screen. The sound was coming from directly beneath me, under the bed. My heart hammered against my ribs, a frantic, stupid rhythm. I held my breath, listening. The apartment was old. It settled. The pipes groaned. It was probably just the building, I told myself. The radiator kicking on, a mouse in the walls. I cycled through every rational explanation, clinging to them like a life preserver. Scritch, scritch, scritch. It was too deliberate for pipes, too conscious. It wasn't a random scraping. It was the sound of something with purpose, something with claws. "Hello?" I said, my voice a dry croak in the immense silence that followed. The scratching stopped instantly. The silence it left behind was somehow heavier, more oppressive than the sound itself. It was a listening silence. I lay there for what felt like an hour, muscles tensed, ears straining. Nothing. Eventually, exhaustion won out over fear, and I fell into a fitful sleep. The next morning, in the clean, rational light of day, the whole thing felt ridiculous. Of course it was a mouse, or the ancient box spring settling. I laughed at myself, a nervous, shaky laugh, and went about my day, burying the memory under textbooks and caffeine. But it came back the next night, and the night after that. Always the same time, just after 2:17 a.m. I started checking the clock. 2:17, on the dot. The scratching would begin, a slow, methodical scraping directly under the center of my mattress. It would last for exactly 3 minutes. I timed it. 3 minutes of that hellish sound. Then it would stop as abruptly as it began, leaving me in that thick, waiting silence. After a week, I was a wreck. Dark circles hung under my eyes like bruises. I jumped at every sound. I couldn't concentrate. The rational explanations were crumbling. I set traps, glue traps, snap traps, and baited them with peanut butter. They remained unsprung, the peanut butter untouched. I got down on my hands and knees, my heart in my throat, and peered under the bed with a flashlight. Nothing but dust bunnies, a forgotten sock, and the stark, unadorned floorboards. No holes, no gnaw marks, nothing. I told my friend Liam about it over cheap beer. "Dude, it's just a mouse," he said, clapping me on the back. "A big stubborn one. Or your downstairs neighbor is into some weird midnight woodworking." "I don't have a downstairs neighbor," I mumbled. "It's a basement. It's locked up." Liam's smile faltered for a second. "Well, then it's a mouse." "Get a cat." I didn't get a cat. I was allergic. Instead, I descended into the basement. The landlord, a perpetually annoyed man named Mr. Henderson, grumbled but gave me the key. The basement was a tomb of forgotten things. Broken furniture, stacks of yellowing newspapers, a thick, damp smell of mildew and decay. The concrete floor was cold and dusty. I shone my light around the space directly beneath my apartment. It was empty. No stored items, no signs of animal activity, just bare, grey concrete. The scratching, however, was not coming from the basement. I was sure of it. The sound was too close, too intimate. It was in the room with me. It was under the floorboards of my bedroom. The next phase began on a Tuesday. I was lying in bed, dreading the approach of 2:17 a.m. when the scratching started again. But this time, it was different. It was slower, and it formed a pattern. Scritch, scritch, pause, scritch and pause, scritch, scritch, scritch. It was Morse code. My grandfather had taught me a little when I was a kid. My blood ran cold as my brain, against my will, translated the taps. H, E. It stopped. My entire body was rigid. I wasn't breathing. The next night, 2:17 a.m. scritch, 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 scritch. Scritch, L, P, help. It was scratching, H-E-L-P, under my bed. A cold, greasy dread washed over me. This wasn't an animal. An animal doesn't know Morse code. An animal doesn't ask for help. The logical part of my brain, the part that was clinging to sanity by its fingernails, screamed that this was impossible. A prank. It had to be. But who? How? Mark was gone. I had the only key. The following night, I didn't wait for the scratching. I set up my laptop on my desk, opened a recording program, and positioned my external microphone on the floor, right by the bed frame. I hit record and got into bed, my eyes fixed on the glowing red digital clock. 2:16 a.m., 2:17 a.m. The scratching began. This time, it was frantic, desperate. Scritch, 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 scritch! It went on for the usual 3 minutes, a furious, scrabbling sound that felt like it was clawing directly at my sanity. When it stopped, I waited, trembling, until the sun came up. Only then did I dare to move. I walked to the desk, my legs feeling like rubber, and played back the recording. The sound was there, clear as day, the frantic clawing scratches. But underneath them, so faint I had to turn the volume all the way up, was something else. A voice. A thin, reedy, impossibly strained whisper layered beneath the sound of claws on wood. Let me out. I vomited into my wastebasket. The sheer, unadulterated horror of that voice. It was a sound that didn't belong in this world. It was the voice of something trapped, something ancient and terribly, terribly wrong. I couldn't live like this. I was losing my mind. My grades were plummeting. I was afraid to be in my own apartment. I decided, with a resolve born of sheer terror, that I would end this. I would tear up the floorboards. I bought a crowbar, a hammer, and a heavy-duty flashlight. I moved the bed, the nightstand, everything to the far side of the room. The worn-out carpet stared back at me, an innocent beige shroud hiding God knows what. With trembling hands, I found a seam in the carpet and peeled it back, revealing the rough wooden floorboards beneath. They were old, thick planks of oak, nailed down firmly. I positioned the crowbar. My hands were slick with sweat. This was it. Either I would find a nest of rats, a bizarre plumbing issue, or something else. I took a deep breath, prayed for rats, and jammed the crowbar into a gap between two boards. The wood groaned in protest, but with a sickening crack, The first board came up. A puff of dust, cold and smelling of earth and decay, billowed out. I shone the flashlight into the darkness. There was no subfloor, no concrete, no insulation. Just a narrow, dark space, a crawl space. But it shouldn't have been there. My apartment was on the second floor. There should have been the ceiling of the basement below. This was impossible geometry. I pulled up another board, then another, creating a hole about 2 feet wide. The beam of my flashlight pierced the absolute blackness. It was a void, a space that defied the physical laws of the building. The air that wafted out was frigid, carrying that same grave damp smell. I lay on my stomach and pointed the light down into the hole, and I saw it. It wasn't a monster. It wasn't a demon with fangs and horns. It was worse. It was a man, or something that had once been a man. He was impossibly thin, his skin stretched taut over a fragile skeleton, pale and waxy like a grub. He was curled in a fetal position in a space that was no more than 8 inches high. His head was twisted at a painful angle, and his eyes, huge, liquid, and entirely black, reflected my flashlight beam with a dull sheen. They held no emotion, no malice, no plea. Just a bottomless, weary emptiness. His hands, ended in long, filthy, broken fingernails, were resting on the dirt just below the floorboards, the source of the scratching. We stared at each other for a timeless moment, the man in the light and the thing in the dark. Then, his lips, chapped and bleeding, parted. "Thank you," he whispered, his voice the dry rustle of dead leaves. And then he moved. He uncurled with a series of sickening pops and cracks, like bones that hadn't moved in a century. He didn't climb out. He flowed out, a pale, slender shape rising from the confines of that impossible space with an unnatural, boneless grace. He stood at the foot of the hole, and he was tall, far too tall, his head nearly brushing the ceiling. He was naked, his body a map of grime and old scars. He took a long, shuddering breath, filling his lungs with air. I think he hadn't tasted in a very, very long time. I scrambled backward, a scream trapped in my throat, my body frozen in pure, primal terror. I wanted to run, to fight, to do anything, but I was paralyzed, a rabbit in the gaze of a wolf. He looked down at his own hands, flexing the long, twisted fingers. Then those bottomless black eyes fixed on me. He didn't smile. He didn't snarl. His expression was one of simple, profound relief. "It's so much smaller up here," he said, his voice now a normal, almost pleasant baritone. It was the most horrifying thing I'd ever heard. He took a step towards me, then another. He didn't walk so much as glide, his feet making no sound on the bare floorboards. "Wait," I choked out, finding my voice at last. It was a pathetic, strangled sound. "What are you?" He stopped, tilting his head. "I was trapped," he said, as if that explained everything. "The space between the floor and the floor, it's a tight place. A forgetting place. You only get one way out." His black eyes seemed to drink the light from my flashlight. "Someone has to take your place." He gestured with one long, pale finger towards the hole in the floor. A cold, sucking dread filled me. I understood. This wasn't a rescue. It was a transfer, a cosmic, cruel game of musical chairs, and the music had just stopped. "No," I whispered. "Please, no. The rules are the rules," he said, and there was a flicker of something in his eyes. Not pity, but a kind of ancient, weary acknowledgement. I waited for 80 years. A man named Albert. He was louder than you, but not as clever. He never thought to record me. He took another step. I was backed against the wall, nowhere to go. "I won't go down there," I said, my voice trembling with a defiance I didn't feel. "You don't have to go down," he said softly. "You just have to be put away." He lunged. It wasn't a physical lunge, not exactly. The room seemed to warp. The space around me compressed. I felt a pressure, an immense, unimaginable force folding me, crushing me. I screamed, but the sound was thin and strangled, swallowed by the collapsing dimensions. The world turned inside out. The walls, the ceiling, the floor, they lost all meaning. I was being flattened, not into the crawl space under the bed, but into the space between the atoms of the floor itself. The space between the floor and the floor. The last thing I saw was my bedroom, from an impossible skewed perspective, looking up through a narrow slit at the pale face of the thing that was now free, looking down at me with those empty black eyes. Then, darkness and silence. I don't know how long I was in that place. Time has no meaning here. It is a void of sensory deprivation, a tight, crushing blackness that presses in on you from all sides. You can't move, you can't scream. You can only exist and feel the slow, inexorable unraveling of your own mind. But you don't die, you don't sleep, you don't need to breathe. You just are. And then, one day, you feel it, a vibration, a presence on the other side of the membrane, the new tenant, the new person living in the room above you, and the instinct takes over, the primal, desperate need for release. You lift a hand you can no longer see. You curl your fingers, your broken, useless nails, and you begin to scratch. Scritch, scritch, scritch. I've been scratching for a long time now. I scratch for the young woman who lives here now. She's a med student. She's pragmatic. She set out mousetraps, just like I did. She looked under the bed. She even had her boyfriend, a skeptical, broad-shouldered guy, spend the night to prove it was nothing. He heard it too. He called the landlord. They found nothing. I've tried Morse code. I've scratched HELP. I've scratched please. Last night, I scratched her name. SARA. I heard her gasp from the bed above. She's getting closer. She's starting to believe. It's the only hope I have. The terrible, monstrous hope that her fear will turn to curiosity, that her desperation for answers will override her common sense, that she will do what I did, that she will peel back the carpet and pry up the boards. And when she does, when she looks down into this impossible darkness and sees my face, what's left of it, I will be ready. I will whisper my thanks. I will feel the glorious, terrifying freedom of stretching into the world above. And she will take my place in this silent, crushing, eternal dark. So if you're lying in bed tonight, and you hear a soft, rhythmic sound from beneath you, scritch, 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 do yourself a favor. Don't look, just turn on the light and pray for morning. But if you do look, if you feel that irresistible pull to know, to understand the source of the sound, know that I am here, waiting, and I am so very, very eager to be let out.